I just want to introduce myself. My name is Nici Macdonald, and I'm the head of certification and standards at the Financial Planning Institute. I will be conducting the session this afternoon. This is just an information session and a question and answer session for everybody regarding the changes to the certification standards that we are proposing. So that is basically linked to the way we assess the criteria for new certified financial planners. We have been on a journey with the next generation certification standards, and we will explain to you exactly where it came from as long back as 2013, that the first changes were introduced, things like the mentorship programs were put in place, and those type of things, up to where we are today, where we are communicating these changes and actually implementing these changes going forward. So we have decided to have this conversation with some of our stakeholders, with our existing members. We have already started speaking to our education providers, are all up to date on what is going to happen. We have been speaking to them for a few years already. We have spoken to many of our students and our candidates who are going to be affected by this already, but we are really trying to get word out there on how this is going to change and how this is going to affect our members going forward. Now, everybody is, because there's so many people in the meeting, we have muted and turned your video off. So if everybody wants to ask a question, please put it in the chat for now. Once we have finished this webinar, we will make sure that we answer questions if there is time left over. So let me go through the presentation, ask your questions in the chat, and then afterwards we'll get to some of the answers. Okay, so let's get straight into it. I do not know if Leilani is going to join us. She said she will. If she's not here yet, we will give her a chance to just address you later on in this webinar as well. So I'm going to share my screen with you. I think it's easier to understand if we can all see what we're talking about. Okay, so it seems like my screen is on, so all good. So let's start. We're calling this changes that we're implementing the next generation certification standards. Just like everything else, financial planning is an ever-moving, ever-evolving area of study that is actually fairly new. You will all know that the first formal financial planning education qualifications was only developed in the 90s and from there on. So we're actually a fairly new organized profession. And with everything, not just financial planning that's changing, but also the way in which education and training and assessments are conducted are also changing. And in light of this, we are calling this the next generation certification standards. Now, to start with, I want to address two rumors that we've heard the last week in the financial planning profession that made its way to FPI before we do anything else. This will not be impacting certified financial planner professionals who's already gone through the certification process and who are currently in good standing. The reason for that is once we've assessed you and once you've passed that assessment process and you keep your designation up to date via the competency requirements that we actually set for you every year. So that's things like completing your CPD, making sure that you act ethical and doing your renewal process. Those type of things is how you keep your competency up to date. Now, what we did in those days when they changed from ILPA over to the new assessment process, and then later on when they changed from where the universities were still conducting the assessment on behalf of FPI, I mean, I still did it that way. through to where we now sit with the PCE, every time that there's been changes, it has not affected the existing CFP professionals that are in good standing. So just to make it very clear, we're not going to let you rewrite the examination, because that was what we've heard. That will not be happening. These changes are for people who are not currently certified financial planners and who are on their pathway and will be assessed as part of that pathway. The second thing that I want to make very clear from the onset, and it's also something that we've heard, we are not making this process easier. We will never drop the standards for certified financial planners in South Africa or in globally for that matter. We are just changing the way in which the assessments are done. I can promise you that it's not going to be any easier to pass the components that we are introducing than it is to currently passing the professional competency exam in its current format. It's just going to be different. It is not going to be easier. So now that we've got that out of the way, let's get into the nitty-gritty of why we're doing this. So I have to start with the basis of this, which is the Financial Planning Standards Board in the US. Now, who are they? The FPSB is the holder of the Certified Financial Planner trademark outside of the US. So all territories outside of the USA who are designated or who are affiliated with the Financial Planning Standards Board and can issue the CFP mark to their members. Oh, I see Lilani is online. Thank you very much, Lilani. I think I'll get to a certain point and then I'll call you in. We will be loading, I'm sorry, I'm just looking at the chats as well before everybody asks. We will be loading this entire presentation within the next day or two onto our website, and we will send everybody the link. So you will be welcome to go and watch it there. And please refer everybody that you think might be interested in this to that as well. So let's get back to the FPSB. So they set the global standards for financial planners outside of the US. And actually the US, the CFP board is actually also following their standards. So we as FPI are an affiliate of the Financial Planning Standards Board, and we are licensed to certify CFP members in South Africa. Therefore, we have to adhere to the global standards and the global certification requirements that are set by the Financial Planning Standards Board. What is Financial Planning Institute is also a SAQA recognized professional body. What does that mean? Just like every FSP has to be licensed and is regulated by the by the FSCA, we are affiliated with SAQA in South Africa, and we are licensed as a professional body by them. There's a few things that go along with this. One of those is that we cannot, for example, be a formal education provider, so we can't run our own courses. That is why we rely on our educational providers to do that. And we also have to adhere to their terms in terms of the requirements for professional bodies. We are also an affiliate of the Financial Planning Standards Board, as I've just explained, licensed to issue the CFP designation in South Africa. So we take the international global standards and localize it to the South African environment, and we also take the global requirements that is set for certified financial planners, and we localize it to a current, that so that it's valid for the South African environment. Now, to give you an idea, if we look at something like the global standards, in South Africa, it's fairly easy to align the international standards to our local curriculum because we do cover all areas of financial planning. But in some other countries, estate planning is, for example, not such a big thing as it is in South Africa, because they might have something like forced inheritance laws. Now, once again, if we get to the certification standards and the requirements for certified financial planners, although the FPSB sets out the framework that you have to adhere to, it does differ from territory to territory, and there's a few things that will influence this. One thing, for example, in South Africa, we have got at an NQF level 8, 7 education providers at this stage that currently either offer the postgrad diploma in financial planning, or in the case of UJ, it is the honors degree in financial planning. But in the US, for example, I think they've got something like 300 education providers. So something like that is much more difficult to control there than it is, for example, here, and to be, intimately involved with the education providers as we are. So what we have done is we have taken the global certification requirements that was issued by the Financial Planning Standards Board. We have looked at the entire process on what we want a certified financial planner to know, to understand, to be able to do, and we have assessed across the board, where do we assess which area of the competencies that you need. In addition to that, the Financial Planning Standards Board audits us at this point in time every year. Every year they pick a certain area of certification. Could be membership renewal, things like the education, things like exam. They send us a list and they audit that we actually do adhere to their requirements. This is imperative to pass for us to keep the CFP license to be able to issue those designations to our members. Now, at the end of last year, after they had, or during the course of last year, if I could rather say that, after they had audited our exam and education component, the comment from the Financial Planning Standards Board was to FPI, but also to many other territories that does not currently have a financial plan component as part of the assessment process, that component has to be instituted at the latest by the end of 2024. So in order for FPI to keep the license for the CFP designation, we have to adhere to what the Financial Planning Standards Board says. Now, I must tell you, this was not new news. We've been working on this process for quite some time, and the financial planning component was the last component to be implemented. Now, after that news came through from the Financial Planning Standards Board, we set out our timelines, we did our planning, and we are now at a point where we can share with you how the FPI is going to incorporate this requirement from the Financial Planning Standards Board into our assessment process for our future certified financial planners. Now, when you look at this entire process, I want you to remember 3 things. When you are or when you get assessed as a certified financial planner, and in our competency profiles that we draft for our financial planners, there are 3 distinct areas that we have to test. The first one is knowledge. That is your academic knowledge, it's your technical knowledge, it's the things that you learn at university. It is your estate duty calculations, your income tax calcs, the regulations, everything that goes along with that. Then there are your skills and your abilities. That is what you need practically in order to be able to fulfill the job requirements of a financial planner. So that would be things like, and if you go have a look at the new global standards that was issued, it would be things like following the 6-step financial planning process to get to a recommendation and implementation and a review of a client. It would be the ability to converse with your client. It would be coaching. It would be understanding yourself and understanding your client. It would be things like being able to connect to your client. It will also be things like technical proficiency. I mean, these days you need to be able to use financial planning technology and software to be able to complete your planning. So there are different areas that we're looking at, and in many cases it is very difficult to test the skills and abilities, for example, at an academic level. I mean, it is just not always possible to test whether you understand the coaching process or, for example, the biases and how to deal with them on an academic level, because it's a theoretical answer. It is much more practical to maybe deal with something like that in an experience component. So what we did was we went and mapped what we test where, and we came up with the requirements as we are implementing them via this process. Once again, I want to say we're not making this easier for candidates. It's just going to be different, but we're going to be assessing the same skills, same knowledge, same abilities at the same levels as we have before, just through a more practical process. So let's look at what it looks like currently. We call the components that you have to adhere to before you can become a certified financial planner professional. We call it the 4 E's. First one is education. Now, currently, you have to complete an NQF level 8 qualification through one of our recognized education providers. So that's your postgrad diploma in financial planning or your BCom honors in financial planning that you have to complete through one of our education providers. Now, what I just want to say about the education providers is that FPI and the education providers are partners. In order for FPI to give you the status of a recognized education provider, your qualifications and your outcomes have to map with the FPI curriculum 100%. However, since the education providers want their students to be successful financial planners, and because the FPI does research on a local and a global level on how to perform the functions of a financial planner, it is in their best interest, as it is in ours, for us to develop these curriculums together and to ensure that their curriculums align with what needs to be taught in order to be able to do the job. So I just want to make it clear that we're really working closely together. We are in a partnership. There is 100% buy-in from our education providers on the changes that we are proposing. We've been speaking to them for a year and a half, and we are on track with doing everything that we need to do to get this implemented at the education providers as well, the steps that I'll explain going forward. So you complete your education component, that's your first tick. You then come through to the FPI for the examination component. Now, currently, this is the professional competency examination in its current format, which is a 100-mark case study. They write it over 2 days as 2 individual case studies of 50 marks each. These case studies, you have to pass at 60% to be able to be found competent. Now, we all know that everybody is extremely scared of this examination. I can tell you that if you prepare for it properly and you approach the exam like you would a client situation, you will probably pass it. The biggest reason for the not passing is the application that we see lacking from candidates. So they give us gorgeous academic answers that is copy and pasted from a book, for example, but they sometimes or most of the time forget that they're actually working with a real person who has real needs and real objectives, and that you have to apply the knowledge that you've gained to that client. So that is the biggest reason for candidates not passing the examination, and once they get that, they normally do. That is the examination component. Now, these 2 components are going to be where the changes are coming in. This next 2 components, experience and ethics, are not going to be amended at this point in time. That will stay the same. So for the experience requirement, you will still need to show us 3 years worth of relevant financial planning experience. In order to qualify to become a certified financial planner professional, or you can go onto our supervised mentorship program, which is at least a 1-year program, but we find that people normally complete it closer to 18 months to 2 years. And at the end of that program, you have to give us a portfolio of evidence that we will assess to ensure that you actually did meet all those requirements. And then your ethics component is that you will sign and make sure that you adhere to the code of ethics, and we will also do certain checks. We double check that you've not been debarred and all of those things. And if you do not pass that check, we will not allow you to become a certified financial planner professional. So that is our 4 E's as it stands currently. Now, from the 1st of January 2025, so it's not next year January, it's the year thereafter, these requirements are going to change to the following. Our education component is going to be amended, that your knowledge component is tested at university level. Now, you may ask, is it not done like that already? And we will tell you in a manner, yes, but currently the FPI is not directly involved with the assessment and the moderation process at the universities. So from 2024 onwards, so from next year, we will be involved in moderating as an external moderator every single paper from every single recognized education provider at NQF level 8 for the integrated case study modules that they've got in their qualifications. So if you get to your integrated case study module and you sit for that examination, FPI would have been involved in externally moderating that examination so that we can make sure of certain things, and I'll go through it with you now. What exactly are we looking at and why are we getting involved in the moderation? So your knowledge component, once you have completed your qualification, would have been ticked off as part of the standard setting examination. So it's as part of that examination in the integrated case study that you will write. So it's your summative assessment at the very end of your qualification that we will be involved in the moderating and then making sure that it meets that standards that it's set by the FPI. The second component will then be a capstone course linked to a financial plan. So what will happen is your candidate will receive their qualification at the university. They will then qualify to come to FPI and say, I want to sit for the capstone course. Now, what is a capstone course? First of all, capstone means that it is once again like a holistic assessment of your knowledge, your skills, and your abilities and what you've learned. The capstone course will be an 8 to 10 week practical course on how to take that knowledge that you've now gained and apply it in practice. So we will speak about things like behaviors, like how to talk to your client, how to put your financial plan together, and how to approach your client and make sure that that financial plan is the solution that your client needs and the plan that your client will be able to follow to get to his or her goals and objectives. This course is currently being developed. We are very proud to say that we have got Wessel Oosthuizen to assist us with this. It'll be broken down into the different modules for financial planning. So you'll have one on estate planning, one on retirement, one on investments, and those type of things. We will also in this course be focusing quite a bit on the psychology of financial planning and how to deal with your client, bringing those principles in. So that will be a course that you will have. It will be a hybrid that we at this point in time contemplating, a hybrid of online lectures, self-study, assessment type of projects that you'll have in it. So it'll be a formalized course over 8 to 10 weeks that you will follow. At the end of this course, your candidate, let me just go back one step. Sorry, I'm interrupting myself. This course will also count towards your CPD hours, and we will make this course available to our existing members for CPD as well, because we think it'll be a great add-on. We had someone speaking to us not too long ago that said she actually never does estate planning. In a job, it just never comes up. It's not part of her duties every day. And she would love to come and do the estate planning part of this, just as a refresher. So it will also be available to our existing members as a CPD offering that we will communicate obviously later. So once you've completed your capstone course, and we are happy that you completed it successfully, you will then come to FPI and say, I am ready for my financial plan. We will give you a case study with a client, and we will give you a certain amount of time to complete this case study and submit it to us. Now, this will be where our formalized assessment process comes into play. You will then have your time available. You will draft the financial plan in terms of the regulations that we will, or the guidelines that we will give you, in the format that we will give you, with the requirements that we will give you. One of those requirements we foresee is that we will allow people to use financial planning technologies to a certain extent to maybe do the calculations, because we have already tested that they could do these calculations at university level through the standard setting exam. We will now give you the chance to maybe do it via financial planning technology software and those. So there will be certain rules in place. We will show you how the financial plan component works in other territories and how we are adapting it. There will still be a 60% pass rate for this financial plan. We will not be dropping the standards, so the competency will be achieved there. So instead of us running another exam in the format that we currently are, we will be assessing your knowledge component through FPI moderating the papers at university level and already test your knowledge component there. You will then come through, do the capstone course, the practical course, after which the financial plan component and the submission of such plan and the assessment thereof will be your final requirement in the examination process. And you will then have to be found competent there. Experience, ethics, staying completely the same. Experience still 3 years or through the mentorship program. There will be some RPL, some recognition of prior learning involved there. We're still working out the details, but that will be communicated during the course of next year. And then obviously your ethics requirement will always stand, because we test your ethics every year when you renew as well. So I just want to highlight some of the details in some of these components. So on the standard setting examination at the that will be then run at the universities as the summative assessment of the integrated case study module. So if you studied like we did those days at the University of the Free State, it would have been the FPI, what do they call him, 714 process. I see Charles Horner. So the ability to data capture in a tool that produces a financial plan is what is tested. I'm going to tell you unequivocally no. And we'll get to that when we get to the financial plan component. Once again, we are not making this easier. So keep that in mind. So let's stick to the standard setting examination. What are we testing at university level? What are we moderating? We're making sure that the content that they test you on is correct and it's aligned to the financial planner curriculum framework. So it's aligned to our curriculum. What we also test is the formula that is prescribed from the FPI side in terms of the job analysis survey is followed. So what does that mean? Every few years, FPI runs what we call a job analysis survey. This is an enormous survey that many of our certified financial planners have completed locally, but also internationally, to determine how FPI or how certified financial planners spend their time. So it is basically a breakdown of the different areas of financial planning and how much time is spent on each area. Now, in the South African context, there are slight differences. So something like investments and retirement is quite prevalent for South African financial planners. So that will have a weighting of about 15 to 16%, where our financial, where something like estate planning would maybe be a 13 to 14%. So there's small weighting differences in there. That is also the way we currently draft our exam papers. So that is the way we prescribe it to be. We will run another job analysis survey in a few years, and maybe some of the weightings will change. So every paper that is drafted will adhere to those weightings. So we'll test the same amount of retirement planning versus investments versus estate planning, financial management, and those things. We will also check that the job and the question paper is set at the correct NQF level, which is level 8, and that it is at the level that FPI expects this paper to be. Now let's move on to the capstone course. I have said that it's a training program that will teach you the practical application of what you've learned in at the university in your academic studies. It is currently in development. We will be running a pilot of this in 2024, probably Q3. And from the 1st of January 2025, it will then be one of the components in the Certified Financial Planner pathway. I have said that it is 8 to 10 week, and it will be a type of a hybrid where we will include live lectures, short assessment, reading material, all of those type of things. And it will be accredited for CPD. And then the financial plan, what we're currently doing is we are liaising with some of the territories who've done the financial plan and who've implemented it successfully. I'm specifically thinking of Australia, India, Canada, and Ireland. And we have had sight, and this is where I want to specifically address Charles's comment about whether the financial plan is just going to test whether you can punch some information into a financial plan component or into software and get a printout on the other end, and then you would have passed your financial plan. And I can tell you unequivocally that that will not be sufficient. I have had a look at the rubrics that those people use, that those territories use when they assess these financial plans. And I can tell you in all honesty that the financial planning software is only going to help you with a very, very small piece of what we are going to assess in the financial plan. And that might be something like, for example, a estate duty calculation, or maybe a cash flow on retirement, one of those nice little graphs that you might get, or something like that. There is a lot of information in that financial plan that we are going to require of our candidates that cannot be done by financial planning software. I'm thinking of specifically the behavioral things we're going to build into these case studies. I'm thinking of something like, and this is something actually that our candidates in our examinations, and I see one of my moderators are online, and I'm going to use her words. Our candidate still does not understand that you cannot just use a generic financial plan, generic recommendation for a client who has very specific needs. Now, when we give them the case studies and the examination, we draft it in a manner that we make sure that we want a certain output from you. We want I'm sorry, Charles, I'm not going to share my rubric with you because then you will see exactly how we're going to draft this thing, and then it will be even easier to pass. But I can assure you that we are not going to get past the FPSB assessment of our financial plan component if our rubrics are not in line with what we expect. And I just want to make the comment here. I am a certified financial planner myself, and I've worked very hard over the years to get here and to keep my designation intact. If you look at the things that come through our CEC, our disciplinary committee, and how seriously people take this designation, there's no way that we're going to drop the standard and make it easier for candidates to get in. We're just changing the assessment process. So what I want to tell you today is, although all the details of the financial plans are not worked out yet, we will be sharing the full policies when we get there. We will be sharing the way that we're going to assess it. We will ensure that when we find or when we get a financial plan from a candidate, that it's their own work, that it was not done by anyone else, that it meets a high standard, and I can promise you now that we're probably going to have some fights with some of the technology providers who's going to say, but my financial plan that this client produced meets the standard. It is not a compliance standard. It is a certified financial planner professional standard, and that is much higher than a compliance standard. Yes, you have to adhere to the compliance. We test that as well, but that is not the standard that we're talking about. We were with one of our professional practices not too long ago, and we had a long conversation about financial plans. And they were of the opinion that every single financial plan has to be started from scratch, and they are even loath to use a template. Why? Because every single client differs. So technically, the financial plan should also differ. So just keep that in mind. So that is the financial plan. I can just say something about the cost. FPI do not want to, because of the changes that we are making, disadvantage any candidates in terms of monetary, issues. So we are aiming to keep the cost for both the capstone course together with the financial plan component the same as what you would have paid for the professional competency examination that you have to sit for now. Obviously, the cost will be communicated later on, but that is what we're aiming for. Now, let's talk about how this is going to change or how this is going to affect people who are currently in the pipeline, because I think this is the biggest message that we have to get out there. If you obtained your qualification at any of our educational providers and you completed the integrated case study with them from 2024 onwards, you will fall straight into the new process. So that means if you enroll with the University of the Free State next year, you pass your integrated case study module and all the other modules, and you obtain your qualification, you will come straight through to FPI in 2025, and you will be able to sit for the capstone course and then submit your financial plan. And going forward, for everybody who obtains their qualification after that, that is the process that we will follow. However, there's quite a few people in the industry who are currently completing their qualifications. So they're going to finalize their writing exams now or in November. And then there's also people who completed their postgrad qualifications 2022 and before, but who never came to sit for the professional competency examination or did not pass the professional competency examination. There will be two paths that these candidates can follow. So from 2024, you get your qualification, you're fine, you're following the new process. That will be what's available to you. But if you completed your qualification 2023 or before, you'll have one of two choices. The first one is to complete the professional competency exam in its current format before the end of 2024. Now, in order to accommodate this, and because we know many people need more than once to pass these examinations, instead of running 3 exams, we will run 4 examinations during 2024. We want to make sure that there's enough time for people to pass this examination. This means that if you pass the PCE in its current format, you will be able to still follow the pathway as it is in place now. So as long as you then meet the education, the experience and the ethics requirements, you will become a certified financial planner professional when you apply. However, if you decide not to sit for this examination, or you don't pass this examination by the end of 2024, we will have to add an extra step into these candidates' process, because we did not actually do the standard setting with their qualifications at the universities. Remember, I spoke about the external moderators, making sure that those papers are at the level FPI expects to be. We did not do that 2023 and before. We will have to have them sit for a knowledge component test, which will be in the form of a multiple choice, 50-mark questions, 50 marks, and you will have to pass this at 60% before you gain access to the capstone course. So what we are trying to say is that if you obtained your qualification before or during 2023, you've got two choices in terms of the route you want to follow. The first one is to pass the PCE in its current format before the end of 2024. It is a 100-mark case study, 2 papers. Once it is passed, your examination is valid for 5 years. Why 5 years? I love Kobus's comment. I am also happy I have my CFP intact, Kobus. Once this is passed, the examination is valid for 5 years. Now, why do we say 5 years? It's to give people who have not got the experience component down yet time to obtain that and then apply for membership. Once that 5 years have expired, I'm sorry, you will have to come back and sit for the exam again. And in the case where you then did not sit for the exam, you will have to go through this option 2 process that we are giving you here. So experience and ethics will also then be required, and you will then be able to apply for your CFP designation. Option 2, you don't come and sit for the PCE in its current format. And I also understand that there are people who are so scared of this examination that they do not want to sit for it, or they've tried a few times and they don't pass it, and they would maybe give the other process a bit of a go. So if that is your choice and you do not sit for the PCE in its current format before the end of 2024, you will then have to pass a multiple choice exam, 50 mark, that will be set by FPI, which will give you access to the capstone course, and you will then have to complete the financial plan component. If you then have your experience and ethics requirement in place, you can apply for the CFP designation. So that is the choices. I am not saying the one is better than the other. They're different. They're both equally difficult, not difficult, depending on how you approach it. But that is absolutely the prerogative of the candidate at that point in time. So examinations, I just wanted to mention this. If you are considering following option 1, you will basically have 5 attempts to pass this examination. We've got 21, 22 September. I know it's short notice, but registrations are still open. We've got 8 and 9 February of next year, 25 and 26 of April are also already open, and then there will be 2 additional dates later in 2024. The cost for this is currently 3,695. Now, once you've registered and paid, you will gain access to our learning support portal, lots of webinars, all your old case studies with suggested answers. We have live webinars for our candidates. So there's quite a robust support system in place for our candidates. So if anybody needs any information on this or on anything we've discussed today, please go to certification@fpi.co.za and send us an email. So I'm going to finish off, and then I'm going to give Lelani a few minutes just to add to what I've said and make sure that I didn't forget anything. The PCE will come to an end in Jan 2025 in its current format. The education providers will draft the standard setting exams. FPI will moderate the exam papers. The FPI will offer capstone, and you must then submit a financial plan on the completion of the course. And you will have 2 options if you're someone who obtained your qualification 2023 and before. The first one is to sit for the PCE by the end of next year. The second one will be to follow the new process with the added requirement of a multiple choice exam. And that is my story. So I'm going to stop sharing here, and I'm going to see Lelani, are you unmuted, or must we unmute you? There you are.
I am here. Nici, thank you so much. It says this call is no longer being recorded. I just want to make sure if that's correct or not. All right, so fantastic to see so many members online. Carmen, it's lovely. We haven't seen each other in, I was hoping to say months, but it's actually years now. Charles, I've noted your comments. Thank you very much. And as always, Mr. Kobus Klein, thank you so much for being online. We've got about 183 people online. Thank you for making time for the Financial Planning Institute today. So just, we do understand that, some people would welcome this with open arms. Some people may be apprehensive because, 2015, I had to obtain my qualification. 2016, I had to write the PCE and I had to go through the drenches and all of that. But you know what? If we look at from ILPA's time, which is the Institute of Life Pensions Advisors. In fact, I spoke to a member today with regards to the ILPA program those years. Those years, ILPA was not a qualification, by the way. It was just a professional. And I don't want to say just because it was very, very tough. I remember seeing those first exams. It was by no means easy. Let me make that very clear. But it was not a qualification. So over the years, we have evolved. Fast forward to where we are today. So, Nici, I'm going to just from an international point of view, maybe just explain what has happened at the Financial Planning Standards Board. Now, what we need to remember is back in, and Nici did go through the history of the CFP mark in South Africa. The CFP mark in South Africa, we were allowed to actually certify individuals in South Africa as CFP professionals because those years, the FPI and still to today, we're not allowed to be a training provider. So the universities are delivering the program on our behalf, which is why we actually approved the university. So the qualification that you see at the university is based on the Financial Planning Standards Board's curriculum, localized to South Africa, taking into consideration our monetary and fiscal policies, but also our economy that is different to the rest of the world, and also our unique circumstances that we have. So we are allowed to localize the curriculum up to about 20%, but 80% is the global curriculum that we see. So the universities then, in short, is who we use to help us with the first E. And how that is going to change, Nici has actually already indicated to us how that is changing. So the universities, if I can talk about, if there's any chartered accountants online, if I may use SAICA as an example. So SAICA also has the 2 exams. So FPI we started investigating this in 2018 already. Where we look at what the other professions are doing, but also from a financial planning standards board point of view, they started realizing that, what the minimum standard is set through the exams globally, but how and where do we actually test if the candidates can put a financial plan together? So at the universities, and I do understand if I look at the comments that specifically Charles has made, it's not data capturing and whoop, you've got it easy. You don't have to go and sit for the PCE. So if we look at the universities and the exam that's happening, the old FPR 714, that might have been a nightmare for you or not. But that case study is FPI as the custodian of that qualification at the university, because it's our program that the university is running. We come in and we then make sure that the minimum standard is set, the same as what SAICA is doing. So they go to the universities, moderate, and make sure that it's on the same level. What we then do is the Financial Planning Standards Board has realized globally that the financial planning component, the plan itself, is not being tested well enough. And this is just in the exam component. So we shouldn't confuse that with the education component versus the examination component versus the experience component. You would still need to do your 3 years of experience. The only difference now is you still write a standard setting exam, moderated by the professional body and the Financial Planning Standards Board affiliate, which is the FPI in South Africa. You do the capstone course, and you will then have a certain amount of time to actually download one of the case studies. Obviously, we won't make the rubric and the case studies and everything available long before the time, because it's like giving the answer paper and the question paper and the memorandum away long before the time. So you will be able, after the course that you've done, to download one of the case studies, which will look pretty much the same as what the exam paper looked like today, which is a case study. To say, here's the case study, and what we will then say is go and please give us a financial plan where you look at all aspects from holistic financial planning, but we will test your abilities during this exam as well. So do you have the ability to actually interact and engage with technology? So we will test a lot of the abilities that comes through, but also bear in mind that the Financial Planning Standards Board international curriculum has changed. And all those elements coming in from the psychology of financial planning all the way to how you deal with the human aspects of the client will also be changed. You will also be tested during that phase. So the world has changed, and why these changes also came through. Nici, you spoke about the job analysis survey. That is something that any profession globally does. They run a job analysis survey to make sure what does a financial planner do on a day-to-day basis in the real life. That is then tested in the assessments, whether an assessment takes many shapes and forms. It's not always just an exam. There could be a portfolio of evidence, there could be an examination, there could be a capstone course like we are doing now. So the need for changing to the capstone course is something that does come from the Financial Planning Standards Board. In fact, it's an audit that we had where the Financial Planning Standards Board said, we are not testing the financial planning component strong enough. And we had to change our assessment to make sure we still do the standard setting exam. We will just use the university's exams now, capstone course, and then each candidate will have to submit a financial plan. And this is from the Financial Planning Standards Board Standard Setting Committee, which is headed up by Paul Grimes. He is the Chief Professionalisms Officer at the Financial Planning Standards Board. He used to be the CEO of FPSB Ireland. So that is headed up by the Standards Board in the Financial Planning Standards Board under the Financial Planning Standards Committee. Nici, so that's just really high level that is something that's coming from the FPSB. And because the Financial Planning Standards Board licenses us in South Africa for the CFP mark, we have to adhere and comply with the certification standards set by the international body. And that was just maybe from a high level, Nici. That's it from my side. I see Carmen did ask a question. Yes. I started typing my response.
I also, Carmen actually has a very good point, which is financial technology. And if somebody maybe didn't read it, let's just repeat it. Financial technology could present a problem in a plan because there might be internal issues and, the assumptions might not agree with what, we asked you to do. And then your outcome or the advantage is that students will have to now truly understand the tools they are using. And we see that too much in practice, where you put all the information into the financial planning software on this end. You don't actually understand what assumptions and what manners and what calculations are being done inside the software to get to the answer. So you will still have to make 100% sure that that is technically correct if you want to pass this paper. And that is the same as what we would test in examination. So Carmen, absolutely 100% articulated.
I agree with her.
Correctly. If you don't understand your financial planning software, you will not be able to use it to compile a financial plan. And maybe that will just also bring that recognition a little bit closer, especially, in our existing certified financial planners as well.
Yeah. And I think, Nici, if I may, just to give some of the members comfort online, it's not as if we're not going to test the candidates, how to use that financial calculator. We are testing them in that case study exam. At DASA, I still use mine to today. I mean, I see so many CFP professionals who still works with their calculators because, to Carmen's point, let's not call out the platforms, but there's a few platforms where we see that the resultant rate is wrong. They get so many things, the assumptions is wrong. So we've seen that. So I think what is important to emphasize, Nici, on the day that the candidate is actually doing these case studies, we're not going to test the technology. We're not testing we just need to make sure that the technology that they're using can actually give effect to the 6 steps of financial planning. In fact, the 6 steps of financial planning, for those who don't know, has recently been updated. It's still the 6 steps, but it's got 20 distinct defined financial planning practices. And those are the financial planning practices in accordance to the international curriculum that will also be tested during the case study examination. I see we've Johan Klute online as well. Welcome, Johan.
And Johan is one of our education providers at NQF level 5 and 6. And he's made a very good point where planners use the software, but they have no understanding of how the software get to the answers, and then the answers are incorrect. So whether it's going to be a hindrance or not. And then Charles have asked the question about good question, and it's actually something we forgot to address. From FPI side, we will make sure the candidates are not prejudiced. And if we do identify that financial planning software that can maybe be used, we will try and make that available to our candidates. It is actually something that we've discussed from the very beginning. We will make sure that there is a level playing field, because many of our candidates are not in practice. So, it's people that maybe sit in academia or in investment analysis or whatever the situation might be. So, so we'll definitely, that is one of our considerations that we're looking at in putting the framework together.
Charles, I must again thank you for that question. You are going to find those students who comes in and they want to come and do the capstone, but we will, Nici, to the point somebody else asked, sorry, the emojis are all over, I can't see the name. Tumisang also asked, would we look at software? We will only look at it, Tumisang, from the point of view that it actually complies with the FPI's practice standards. But the 6 steps of financial planning, can they actually use that software during the examination? We will by no means endorse it. So you won't have financial planning tech firms that can go and say, oh, our platform is endorsed for the exam. We will not have that. We will merely look at the software, whether the student can use it. At that point in time, there will most probably be a generic financial planning technology tool that we will be using if somebody doesn't have access. But again, the point is not to test the technology. It's to test the candidate's ability to interact with the technology, where you bring in the learning outcome statements, that's your knowledge component. It's your abilities and your ability to collect, analyze, and make recommendations. That's your ability. Your skills, we then look at your overall skills, are no longer just, can you work the calculator? It's more skills that we are actually assessing. And actually, for the first time, Nici, we will be able to assess more of the skills because we are relying on FP Tech. And it's just the way the world is working. We have to look at different ways to assess the newer financial planner coming in to make it a lot more realistic experience for them when they become CFP professionals. Now, we know in South Africa, we do not have work integrated learning components that's strong enough in the university modules. Some international providers may have that. And FPI's qualification, Johan, you would know what I'm referring to here, is we don't run our qualifications through the QCTO. And we don't have plans to run the postgraduate NQF8 qualifications through a QCTO model. For all sorts of reasons, there's not enough time left to address that. So we won't follow the QCTO model, which is the qualifications. It's a trade association for the Qualifications Council for Trades and Occupations. We are operating within the CHE space, which is the Council for Higher Education. And we will keep on operating in CHE, and CHE's will component, which is work integrated learning, is not strong enough to facilitate this as well, which is why capstone comes in. And just, I was talking about SAICA. So SAICA at the first exam, the second exam that SAICA does is almost the same as what we're doing here. It's also a capstone exam. You are allowed to then use technology to incorporate all your skills. So we're not the first profession in South Africa that is actually moving in this direction, Nici.
Yes. Yeah. I see we're out of time. Thank you very much. Just next steps. We want to get the message out there far and wide. So everybody who is impacted by this process, if you feel that FPI needs to come, if you've got a group of students or employees or whatever the situation might be, and you feel FPI should come and speak to them, please let us know. We are liaising with our education providers, with our corporate partners, with our professional practices, in order to be able to get the message out to everybody. We don't want anyone to be left behind. So please, refer them to us. They can contact us at certification@fpi.co.za. They can also speak to membership. Our entire FPI team is ready to answer the questions that is needed. So we are placing this recording on our website. It will be there ASAP, hopefully by tomorrow. There is currently one, but we're going to rather add this one because the first one was geared mostly towards students, so the approach was a little bit different. And if there are any further questions or concerns, my email address is Nici, nici@fpi.co.za. If you have inputs that you want to give us, if you have some ideas, please let us know. we want to make this as transparent as possible and be
Yeah.
sure that everybody, keeps that everybody is satisfied that we will keep everything intact as it is.
And Nici, if I may, it's just wonderful to recognize a lot of the names online as people that's been involved with FPI for more than 10 years, where you helped us to set the standards. I'm just picking up a few names here. Mariette, we have her online. We have Megan, who's been involved for quite a long time. Carmen, been involved for ages. Kobus as well. So it's just thank you so much, everybody. I can't mention everybody, but I see there's a lot of people that supported FPI fantastically over the years. And dankie, Nyabonga Kulu Baya dankie. Thank you. It helps us tremendously, Nici, to actually have the support of the members. It's not an easy transition for us, but it's something that does come from the Financial Planning Standards Board. And if we want to keep that accreditation of CFP in South Africa, we have to comply with the FPSB standards. And I think that's important to note.
Yes, and comply without duplicating certain assessments.
Yes.
I think that's the most
streamlining
important.
globally.
Streamlining the process.
Yeah.
Thank you,
and
everybody.
Also to help with cross-border, just quickly to also help with cross-border, but that's a call for another day. Dankie julle. Thank you, everyone. Dankie, Nici. Well done, team. Blessings.
Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.